Hello there. Welcome back to Jennie Designs with Paper. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm working on another mixed media page, so get comfy and let's get crafty. This is the February Artsy Trio Facebook group mood board, and this mood board was created by Via Grob in Switzerland, I believe, and it is all about the neutrals. There's a pop of blue in there, but it's all about the neutrals. Well, I have a piece of 8.5 by 5.5. This is actually acrylic paint paper. I got this pad on sale at Hobby Lobby, like on clearance, like for $1.25, and I've never used it except as clean off paper. Like when I had extra paint and stuff on my stencils. So I'm going to use it this year for my Artsy Trio. I also have a whole bunch of neutral colored ephemera pieces of paper that I purchased from Amazon without really paying attention to sizing. So they're kind of small, but that's okay. I'm going to tear them up anyway. And I'm going to tear them up and add mostly the torn sizes toward the center of the page, leaving the straight edges on the edge because, I'm going to trim it off anyway. I'm going to adhere all of these neutral colored torn papers down to my art journal page with some Liquitex matte fluid medium. I'm just going to brush it on real quick. I'm going to go underneath and on top. I'm not super concerned about wrinkles and stuff because I do have a plan to add some texture to the page that will actually hide any of those moderate wrinkles. Huge bubbles will totally show up, but again, we'll fix that and take care of the texture later. So while I am adding on the torn paper bits here to my art journal page, how's your day going? My house, I feel like, is always on the verge of catastrophe. Like we walk that line between normal chaos and catastrophe. We lost a work phone for about half of a day this week because it was way down in the chair. It was so far away down in the chair that the case and the screen protector were damaged, but the phone was not. Our dog thinks that everybody who comes to our house, who walks by our house, who drives by our house is coming to see her, so she barks like mad, mostly because it's been super cold and she's not been spending a lot of time outside because it's been super cold. Also, my 11th grader brought home one of those dolls that cries for the weekend, so super excited about that. I haven't had a crying baby in my house for, 10 years. Yeah, my youngest will be 11 this next spring, so it's sleeping with her, and I'm shutting my door. I'm just saying, I don't do babies very much anymore, at least not the non-breathing human ones. I'm almost done with the paper on the background here. I did want to make sure that I got the pages. They need to be visually not the same, right? I need to have different shades of neutral, like different colors of neutral and different textures and stuff. And that will add to the next layer of texture that I intend to add to my page. Just no rhyme or reason here. I am trying to use the small bits, and then, I get too small. I feel like I started at the top with like a decent size, and now I'm down the bottom with the itty bitty pieces. I don't know how that happened, but it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and heat dry that fluid medium with my heat gun, making sure I get the front and the back. And then it's time to start talking about texture. First I got to trim off the edges. I did go over the bottom and one side because it was easier to do that and trim it off than it was to try and not do that, at least in theory. Okay, but now it's time to talk about texture. So I have this, this is a Folk Art Crackle Medium. This Crackle Medium has been in my craft stash, I think, since we lived in San Diego, which was when my 21-year-old was born. We have been in Virginia for 17 and a half years. So you would think there would be less Crackle Medium left in this bottle. Oh no, it's still like 2/3 full. So I am going to, and I've used it before, I know it still works. Now maybe it's not as intense as it was 20 years ago, but I'm going for it. I'm adding a liberal layer of this crackle medium to the top of my scrapbook page over all of these neutral colored pattern papers. Now it is, when I say liberal layer, like if I turn it to the side, it could drip off the edges. But one thing I have learned with the crackle medium is that the more liberally it's applied, the better crackles you get. So I left that to set, and it was low key, an hour and a half easily, maybe 2 hours. And you can see it is super shiny now. Won't be forever, but it is super shiny now, and it's all dry. And I'm going to add some other neutral colors to it. I have pulled out antique linen, pumice stone, old paper, black soot, and picket fence distress paints. And I'm just going to put a little dollop of paint of each of those 5 paints on to my work surface there. And dry brush them, or mostly dry brush them across my page. I say mostly because I'm using the same brush I used for my liquid medium and the crackle medium. So it's been sitting in a cup so it doesn't dry out and ruin the bristles. But I am going to just kind of dry brush this paint over the pattern papers and over the crackle medium. So the cool thing is that if I have enough crackle medium on my art journal page, that when this paint starts to dry, it will crack like old paint does, and then you will be able to see those neutral pattern papers and the text on the papers up underneath that paint, and it will add another layer of visual interest. So this is my plan, and I decided to go ahead and use the crackle medium because a lot of the images in the mood board are kind of bark-ish. Like there's a picture to me that looks like a pine cone. There's that picture of the tree. So I felt like it was appropriate to have like a crackle texture to the page. All right, so now that I have all the paints on, we're going to speed it up just a little bit. And I'm trying not to put too much of the same paint in one area. I'm not very good at random. Like my logical side of my brain wants to have everything symmetrical and evenly numbered or evenly divisible. It's just weird. I don't do random very well. And this is an excellent exercise if you do not do random very well. Try not to paint the entire page one color. Now, I did add this black soot, and I low-key don't love it. I think it was too dark. It covered up too much of the pattern papers in the back, and it needed more paint to push it back. So I decided to, first I want to show you that it's already starting to crackle a little bit. Like you can see up in the corner, it's already starting to get some of that texture where the thicker paints are and where the thicker pieces or sections of the crackle medium were applied. I do have a little bit of a bubble there in the middle that is crackle medium. But I am going to heat set this paint with my heat gun. And then I have cleaned off my desk, or cleaned the black soot paint off my desk, and added a little bit more of the other colors. And I'm going to go back over it. Now I want to really kind of fade that black soot out. It was too much. It was too much for me. But in doing this, I'm adding another layer of paint, which I'm crossing my fingers at this point, will intensify that crackle texture. And you can see it's coming through, and the crackle is intensified by the ripped edges, the torn edges of the paper as well. So yeah, I'm just kind of going for it, hoping, that more paint does the trick. And I have successfully removed most of that dark black soot paint, and look at all that yummy crackle texture. It is just so cool looking. Like, I hope at the picture at the end, you can see that close up and how cool it looks. But now that I have the paint on there and it's crackled and it's dried, it's time to start adding in some of the other elements of this mood board. So again, here's the picture of the mood board, and I have some of these, again, nature elements, the wood elements, and there's blue. There's a blue teacup and the blue background in that kind of center square on the right. So I'm going to use this Derwent Ink Tense pencil. This is one of the blues. I forgot to leave it on my desk so I could tell you the name of it. And I am just going to, very quick and very fast forward speed, add some blue mostly vertically, but every once in a while horizontally, but also kind of trying to catch the color around the torn paper fragments and the crackle medium. So Derwent ink tense pencils are a water-soluble, permanent pigment ink that do not bleed as long as you have activated all of the pigment and then dried it sufficiently, which is why I'm adding them to this art journal page, because I am going to be adding some more liquid medium when I go to add my focal point. So I feel like I've added enough blue in there, and it's time for my focal point. This is an image I got out of a magazine, and it was much larger than this, and there was a lot of abstract to the edges, a lot of organic edges, and I trimmed off just enough of this image that I felt like would fit on my art journal page. And I actually trimmed it so close it's in two pieces, and you can see that that white magazine page is in between the stems of those those blue flowers. I do have a plan to correct that, but first I need to get this image adhered down. Now, like I said, this is magazine paper, so it is very responsive to liquid, meaning it is going to curl and roll. So I'm putting some liquid medium down on my art journal page, and then I've put enough on the back of the image that they'll kind of grip together, and I should be able to spread that liquid medium out and have the focal image not curl up too much or wrinkle or bubble. I feel like it was pretty successful going about that in that method. And then I have to figure out where this piece attached before I trimmed it out too close. There were a lot of stems and leaves and stuff that were very, very, very fine. And there was no way I was going to be able to cut those out. So I just went around them. So now that I've got my focal image on there, I'm going to go back over it with a layer of liquid medium to make sure that it is stuck down and that the edges are watertight and that the image is safe from liquid. And that bubble is in my way, so I just pulled out that little finger knife thing from Fiskars and picked it off the page and then put that flower petal back on. I originally was not going to worry about it, but that flower petal just would not lay down tight. This one leaf on the left is hanging over the edge. I will have to trim that off. I am not at all concerned about that. It works. So now that I have this covered, it's adhered down and covered with liquid matte medium, I'm going to heat set it with my heat gun and make sure that is good and dry, because I need to add I need to fix those white spots of the magazine page. So I've just pulled out, I think the first one I pulled out was antique linen, but it was not quite dark enough. So then I pulled out the old paper, and that could be in reverse. And I'm just taking this water brush and picking the paint out of the cap and adding it to those open spaces so that it looks like the background of my art journal page is peeking through instead of the white print or the white page of the magazine. So that was my solution to fix the parts of this floral image that I could not cut out very well. I love the idea of using images from magazines to create art that is for my enjoyment and my experimentation and my benefit, because it's beautiful. Those pictures are beautiful. Now that I have that all painted in and heat set, I need to add some definition to the edges of this flower image. And this was an exercise in ingenuity. Typically, when I use my artist Pitt pens, I just make sure that I have a baby wipe there to the side so I can smear out that color with my wet finger. But the texture in the background was making that very difficult. The texture, the crackle was grabbing on to that medium, and my finger wasn't able to get down in there as well. And so then I decided to go ahead and pull that water brush back out. So I have gone along the edge, and the cool thing with that is I can go a little bit farther, and because the water brush doesn't spread the pigment quite so far as my finger, it's narrower, it's doesn't push the pigment around as much, I guess. So I was able to go around the whole edge of this flower with that brown Pitt pen from Faber-Castell, and then trace over it with the water brush just to fade it back just a little bit. You do need to make sure that all of this paint and everything, the gel medium and everything on your page is completely dry before you go at it with a brush marker of any kind, because that can ruin the nib of your marker. And I was a little bit nervous there a couple of times, so I just scribbled off on the baby wipe to make sure that the nib of my pen was still performing properly. There was a little clump that when I went over it, it felt kind of soft, like it wasn't quite dry. So I was worried that I had just ruined the nib of my pen, but luckily that is not the case. It was just the cap had been off a long time. Okay, so also in my stash of magazine pictures was this quote that I found, and it says, "We believe in unearthing beauty, no matter how hidden or subtle it might be." And it's on a blue background, so it was kind of perfect. It was perfect because it fits the mood board with the neutrals and the blues, and it was perfect because I found this floral image absolutely beautiful, even though it really straddles the line between, what are the two words I'm looking for? Realism and impressionism. It's a photograph of some flowers, but it has been altered in the photography process to make it look a little fuzzy around the edges and stuff like that, and I love it. I have a giant piece of artwork on my wall from a friend's husband who took photographs while his camera was shaking and then printed the photographs on metal, and I love it. It is so beautiful, and that kind of reminded me, this flower kind of reminded me of that. So I am again going to put some liquid medium down on my art journal page, and then I'm going to attempt to put my quote on, or my phrase, or whatever you want to call it, my title, on straight. So that's another thing I don't do very well. I don't do adding things on straight very well. Even sometimes rulers. T-rulers I can do a straight line with, but a regular ruler, I assume that the paper edge is straight, or that, whatever. I'm not very good at straight lines. So, don't come after me when you look at this at the end and you're like, that is totally not straight. Yeah, I know. It's not straight. It's not evenly spaced, but it is on there, and I love it anyway. I'm going to go ahead and heat set that again. And now I've decided that the quote boxes are just a little too blendy-inny. I know those are not words. They don't pop out enough. So I've taken that Derwent pencil again and gone very lightly just on the undersides of the text boxes, and I will activate that pigment with my water brush. And that works okay. It does add some shadow, some emphasis to the bottoms of the text box, but it wasn't quite exactly what I was hoping for. I mean, it's all an experiment, right? So I heat set that really quick, and then I pulled my Pitt pen out again. And this time I went around the tops, the bottoms, and the sides, and I can't even think of words today. Faded that brown back into the background with my water brush. And that gives me more of the type of shadowing I was looking for. It kind of frames out that quote. And that's pretty much all that is done or all I need to do for the front of my art journal page. Now I am going to add this pattern paper from my stash to the back of my art journal page. It was something that I started doing at the very beginning with Artsy Trio. And I've just kept doing it because, I have a whole bunch of pattern paper, and usually when I get down to half a sheet and it goes into my file bin, I forget it's there. So I'm just going to go ahead. I am going to go ahead and learn to speak proper English and then place my art journal page in the corner of this pattern paper so I can trim that off with my paper trimmer. I just want to burnish that on there. My double-sided adhesive was being a little wonky and did not want to come out very smooth, so I wanted to make sure I had enough to keep that paper adhered. Now, I did go a little off the side on the top right, and that's probably because when I was trimming off that first layer of pattern paper, I didn't trim it quite straight, like with my scissors. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that, deal with it later if I feel like it. And now I'm adding the mood board, the photo of the mood board that I printed out, onto the back of my art journal page. And I keep forgetting that on the back it needs to go to the left because when I punch holes in this page, they're going to be on the right. So here is my art journal page. I love how it turned out. I love the texture. I love the colors. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and hanging out with me today. I have a couple of other videos here I think you might like as well. And I have a subscribe button. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you did. Leave me a comment down below. Give me a thumbs up. And I hope you have a really fabulous, warm winter day.